Hi, everyone. Good morning and good evening, depending on where in the world you're watching us from today. And welcome to another session of the PlaceOS product live demos. Tonight, we're going to walk through a new feature of PlaceOS, and we're also joined by our CEO and co-founder of PlaceOS, John McFarlane, and we've also got Mario, our head of solution design, joining us this evening, who's going to have a little bit of a chat later on. But I think to kick things off, we might jump straight into a product demo. As always, we're constantly reviewing features that are submitted to us, and obviously building them into the product as we go along. So these sessions, as well as some email communication and other things, serve as a bit of a forum for us to be able to share some of that work that we've been doing on the platform. And most commonly, these features have come from our user base. So if there's something that you've been requesting, or a feature request that you've logged with us through one of the various channels, this is typically the place where you're going to see that live demo happen. As always with these sessions, as we go through the demos, or as Mario and John are presenting and talking a little bit later on in this session, if you do have any questions that come up, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll address those as we go along this evening. So the first thing that we're going to look at is a new addition to our room booking workflows with the PlaceOS Workplace app, and that is the addition of the room booking approval workflows. And we've tried to make this as simple as possible for our users to adopt, particularly our existing users who may have significant room management deployments in PlaceOS. We didn't want to have to go back and do a bunch of settings and configuration changes and things like that to be able to implement this feature. So the way that we've gone about doing this is actually by implementing the room restriction directly onto the Exchange resource in 365. And one of the reasons for doing that as well is that ensures that if there are any users attempting to book that room outside of the PlaceOS environment, say they're doing it directly through Outlook, they'll have the same experience where they won't be able to book a room that does actually require approval directly. So it's a simple change on Exchange, basically to prevent that room from auto-accepting calendar appointments as room resources are typically configured, and that can be blasted out to a group. So if you were to create a room booking approval group in your security groups inside Exchange, you could basically toggle that state for anywhere from 1 to 10,000 rooms at once through PowerShell. That's why we thought doing it that way might be a bit easier for backwards compatibility, and the Exchange admins can just jump in and affect that change in one hit via PowerShell, which is relatively quick. So from our users' perspective, there's really not a lot that's different. Effectively, they still go through the same room booking workflow in terms of coming into our standard room booking page that we have here. Obviously, selecting the date and time that they intend to have their meeting. Optionally, adding a title. We'll pre-fill that if that's left out, and then we can go through and do our add space workflow. What you'll see here, just for the purposes of this demo, is we've got an approval room, aptly called approval room. Typically, you'd also see a little label pop up on here as well, but this test environment just doesn't have the group configured. But we have an approval room, so this room can't be booked and just auto accept that invite. So we still go through our normal room booking workflow. We add the room in, and we basically go ahead and confirm that. At this point, the user will receive a email notification saying that they have booked a room that requires approval, and that room will undergo that review process by whoever does that in your organization. So maybe a concierge or a floor host or someone like that. The benefit of doing it this way is that room booking does actually still appear in their calendar. The only difference is that you can see here it appears as a tentative booking. So typically when you're booking, you can see down here, Sydney Room 1 has been booked through PlaceOS. That's in an approved or an accepted meeting. But you can see the difference here with our approval room is that's gone into a tentative state. The user still has a record in their calendar that they have a pending room booking waiting approval. And that shows as the tentative state, which makes the most sense in the case of a room that requires approval. From our concierge side, you can see obviously some of our updated concierge design that's slowly going to be rolling out to our end users. But we do now have off to the right-hand side of our calendar view for our room booking, we now have our pending approval modal that can pop out from the side. We can see here quite simply the users, and obviously in this case, that's our approval room 5. We can see who the user is. If there's any other details here, such as catering or notes that have been attached to this meeting requests, they would appear here as well for the concierge to be able to approve those. So the concierge can now simply approve or decline that meeting just by clicking the approval button. That will now go back through to 365. It'll change the state of that tentative meeting, and it'll put that over to a confirmed meeting state. And accept that meeting. Obviously, the concierge, with the standard features that are available in our concierge platform, also have the ability to move the room if required. So if there was a reason why they didn't want to necessarily approve that pending booking for that particular room, they could also opt to move that booking to a different room, or consult with that user at that point in time to understand what their intent was. But as I said, this feature is effectively available as of the next release. So that's in a week or two. We'll be rolling out to production for our PlaceOS Workmate and PlaceOS 1 users. So that feature will be available basically as soon as that update is made. Obviously, the only caveat on making that update is that process will become available once an Exchange admin changes the settings on those rooms to make them requiring approval. And then we can just update that on the PlaceOS side and ensure that it gets the little flag for an approval room, and then the users will be subject to that booking approval process within PlaceOS. So relatively simple implementation of room booking approval, but as I noted, it's we've done it intentionally in a way that enables our existing users to switch over and be quite backwards compatible quite rapidly once this feature is available. And it's a standard feature within the PlaceOS room booking solution moving forward once that becomes available in our production or general availability release. So excited to be able to share that with you tonight. As you would have seen, we've also got some change coming to how our concierge interface looks, and also separating out some of our administrative features from our sort of day-to-day booking management for desks and rooms and parking and those kind of things within the concierge application, just to make it a little bit easier to define those roles for people that may be in a position to manage desks, add, remove, change the booking state, likewise for rooms and things like that, and those users who just do day-to-day administration in terms of approving bookings and doing those sort of tasks. So that's a change that will be coming in the very near future. We've just got a few finishing touches and functionality things to change on the way that this is working, and then that will also roll out to those users that have concierge as well. So as I mentioned, obviously we can accept feature requests either via our service desk or by emailing them into us, and we can add them onto our roadmap. If anyone's interested, we obviously can hold a roadmap session with you and review some of those items that are available when they're anticipated to be available, and also provide you any updates on feature requests that you may have made specific to your environment. The room booking approval process does also work with Google Calendar. We do obviously speak a lot about 365. We've got a lot of user base that exists on 365, but the PlaceOS solution is also or does also support Google Workspace platform. And the room booking approval is also functional in that space. Again, because of the way that we're manipulating that room into a tentative state rather than approved state, we're actually leveraging some of the features of the underlying calendar service to achieve that room booking approval feature. So absolutely, certainly works in the Google Workspace environment as well. If you're using that, effectively all of the PlaceOS features are like for like, with some slight exemptions to that in terms of permission scheming in 365, but overall most of the feature set is like for like between 365 and Google Workspace as well. So that is our room booking approval workflow rolling out in the next week or two to our existing users. And reach out if you want to take advantage of that feature and want some guidance on setting that up or implementing that in your existing PlaceOS solution. And we'd be more than happy to give you a hand with getting that together. Moving on, I think we're going to skip over to potentially sunny UK.
Thanks, Jeremy. My talk is definitely an extension on analytics, so it will make sense as well for Mario to follow this presentation. But I want to talk about what we're thinking, what we're planning, and what's in our roadmap in terms of large language models, AI-based user experiences, and then even further than that, building our own models for insights as a service coming from these large language models. So this is a big topic, but I'm going to sort of start really basic and really talk about why are we thinking about this at PlaceOS. And it comes naturally for us because we're ultimately an integration platform. When people ask me what I do and what PlaceOS does, that's always my one line. We're an integration platform. Anything you see, any of these workplace applications that Jeremy's just demonstrated, or any other application you've seen making use of our platform, it's getting that data and the possible actions from our integrations. And that's our secret sauce, this fact that we have this driver ecosystem where we can have an integration driver for every make and model of everything in your building and workplace. And this gives us opportunity for a lot of data. And previously, we've had to identify what data is important to then represent that in analytics, in dashboards, or as reports. But the exciting thing about large language models is we can train a model and it can take the data output that is not described by us. It can see correlations that we may not necessarily blatantly, specifically tell it to look for. So because we integrate, this is the first starting point with anyone building their own models, or indeed anyone just even integrating with the plugins for AI chat-based user experiences. So there's three areas of integration. There's the data, so the time series data and the survey results from people and their feedback. Then this creates the cross-reference possibility, so we can have data coming in from your lighting system or your Cisco Wi-Fi, and then we can look at results from people about space and how they feel about rooms and correlate things like maybe it's too hot in the space, maybe it's too cold, and we can look at what the data is telling us. And then finally, we're always interested in, well, not just reporting data, but automating processes. So what can we automate on the back of this? So let's dig through each of those areas a little bit further. So for us, we already have an extensive library of integration drivers. We have it across many subsystems in your building, from lighting to building systems to real-time location services to audio-visual systems to authentication sources and directory services and identification systems and messaging systems. This is from over a decade of working on smart building projects and an open source philosophy that allows anyone to contribute to this library. So each of these can generate time series data that can start to come into our system, but then we need to work out what we do with it. And the next sort of area of integration is that user feedback. How do I feel about this space? How did I find the experience? Was the furniture comfortable? And if we cross-reference these two things, something as simple as occupancy of a room versus the total score of a room out of 5 based on some criteria that you may set on comfort and ease of use, we can then work out, well, is the feedback correlating with the usage? Is the utilization of the space low because the furniture is uncomfortable and the room is too hot? These are correlations that we're currently doing as professionals in the industry, knowing what to look for. But this is where we'll get into the large language models and discuss how this correlation can happen automatically. And more than just that, because that could be programmed as logic, it's really just an example of what could be correlated that maybe isn't identified specifically. The other thing to integrate with when it comes to smart building is location. So if we get the location and then reference everything else, we get automatic utilization, automatic occupancy counting, and that gives us really important data for context. And that's like the real difference between a smart building project and like a standard IT project is we're always trying to work out where people are or where individuals are so we can report on that effectively and also automate experiences effectively. So if you have a look at this screenshot here, if all the areas are red, then we could do things in the background such as turn the air conditioning to a higher setting, lock the doors so no more people come into this space, or a communication event to redirect people to other parts of the building. So that location information can feed these models as well to give it some context. And we'll dive into that a little bit more in this presentation. Now, just sort of a step sideways, let's talk about chat as a user experience. And I sort of put this slide together with my subjective experience of chat and for me, I really think back to when Spotlight first launched on a Mac, or when Google Drive first launched, and it didn't have a filing system to find your files with Google Drive on launch. You had to search for it. So this ability to like type your commands rather than go clicking on folders and finding things uh, started to really be ingrained in everything we do. And we do the same on phone. I don't know about you, but I've got a lot of apps and I can never find them. So I'm always searching for them through a chat experience. And then, concurrently in China, Chat UX was already big with WeChat, and the operating system for everything. If you've ever been to a restaurant in China or Hong Kong, that may be your first experience of QR codes way before the pandemic. And then in the work environment, Slack was introduced, and then others followed that example. So Microsoft products, Cisco products, and then we keep extending, and then all of a sudden there's a chat as a platform, and now we can add more experiences to these chat environments, such as Slack, such as Microsoft Teams, to the extent that things are being released exclusively in this chat environment, such as Midjourney, the AI for creating images, and now it's going the other way, where our standard applications are going to have chat-based experiences baked in, so we can achieve things faster. So this also is rapidly being developed by everybody in the industry now. A lot of people are releasing their chat user experiences very rapidly because the platforms have these plugin abilities. Now, we're not rushing into it because we have to consider enterprise security and enterprise privacy. So we're looking at the best way to do this. But if you wanted to get a chat-based user experience into your product, it's very rapid to do so. And this is my favorite slide because it's sort of, from a computer science point of view, when you describe user experiences in these two ways, it's the imperative approach versus the declarative approach. So the room booking example, like we can support multiple user experiences to get to the same outcome. And the clicking through a web form, putting in your requirements of time and date and maybe a title, and then getting filtered results, and then continuing the journey and confirming those filtered results to eventually get to the outcome. Many steps compared to asking chat in any way, because it understands the language. It doesn't have to be programmed for keywords. We can now just get to that outcome immediately. You put all of your requirements in the message, you get a result instantly. You have to think about the business rules and the logic and everything else that an enterprise will have in place. You can't always have this experience for every possible user experience, but it'll be this complement of each other. And where we're seeing this launched early, a lot of dashboard products, a lot of people that do analytics to present things that are already in their dashboard. I think that's okay. That's maybe useful in some ways, but I think it's really the end user experience that will benefit from this. So we can now have an integration into your chat environment, so your standard chat environment, such as Slack, and then you can, instead of using an app or an interface, you can just ask for those commands up front. I need a room. Can you find me a room based on what I have in my calendar? Can you look at my whole week's worth of meetings and add a room to that meeting? You put your outcomes up front and the results are there. So this is what we'll see almost every software package introduced in some form. We're looking at it from the end user point of view first. The analytics is what I'll go into in a minute, but I think analytics, we can think more deeply than just the simple user experience examples, because this chat user experience is just replacing the need for interaction with a form and with a graphical user interface and skipping many steps, where dashboards, I think, still have a purpose. So for analytics, they're still useful. But what dashboards aren't providing are insights. And this is more of our long-term roadmap because it requires us to train our own models, something we're doing and something we're partnering with, and we'll make some announcements with some of our partnerships in the near future with experts in AI and building models. But insights as a service means we can reference our own data, which is quite unique in itself. All of those integrations we have in our library, streaming out time series data, all of the feedback from the thousands of users using PlaceOS, coming into our unique model. But the great thing about these language models is we can also reference things not in our system. We can go out of our system and look at things like industry standards, white papers. So we can start to answer why, not just what. So there's a lot of dashboards out there, including our own, but there's also a lot of dashboard products that added AI, but they're still just giving you the what happened. They're just presenting it to you faster. But this will leverage something that isn't possible today without AI, the ability to give you some insights. And my example here is, why is room 33 underutilized? And then we can look at the survey results from our system. Well, maybe that can give us some information about comfort levels. Then we can look at some time series data on the room environmentals. So if we're sensing the humidity levels in that room, then the model can look up the standards of humidity levels in a work environment and does it fall within that range? And then based on that, it can give some recommendations. Well, the room is too humid. Perhaps the reason for that is air conditioning, and we could bring this back to recommending automation triggers, or perhaps it's because it's too sunny in that room, and we could look at automating the blinds in a more effective way rather than just running on schedules. We can run on this dynamic information that we're getting and use recommendations from this insights as a service engine powered by these large language models, doing correlations and referencing data sets internally and externally. I'll just end with like the other areas of AI that we're interested in. And another obvious one when it comes to smart building, because as I said, location tracking and smart buildings go hand in hand. It's what makes the technology smart building technology. And we want better ways of doing that, right? Like we can count people pretty effectively through many systems now. So your existing Wi-Fi, for example, your access control system, you already have those systems in place, and that allows us to count people. But we're actually more interested in what are those people doing, and what else is in the space besides people. So this screenshot is actually our co-founder Stephen Von Takish's apartment in Manly, Sydney, and he's experimenting, training AI using an open source project and contributing to it. You can see here it's identifying the bird, it's identifying the table. He's using it for automatic bird feeding as a side project. But this is actually interesting to us as a business because we can, object recognition of a table can be a workplace feature. If we know that's a desk and we know that that's a person at the desk, that's an automatic check-in event without the need for a sensor. But what else? Like we could say, well, how many people in that space had a laptop with them? Just think about all the other analytics we have if we're not just doing people counting, but we're doing object recognition with people counting and using the AI in the cameras and the camera services to give you better analytics that go beyond what we're doing today. So that's the other area. So if I sort of summarize this, there's one area of chat user experience that if you just simply want to replace your manual methods of filling in forms and going through results and filtering results, that can be a plug-in pretty rapidly. We're still investigating the privacy and the security of doing that for an enterprise environment. So we're not rushing into that, but it could be applied to an individual project of ours if that's an area of interest. Secondly, there's the area of training our own models. This could be a collective model, and it will be a collective model of PlaceOS, but we could do this for individual customers that have the enterprise scale. So we have customers with hundreds of locations, multinational. There could be a model specifically for that customer that we could work together on. And finally, we're looking at analytics through AI training of camera input. So cameras as sensors to give us more than just people count. Those three areas are what we're actively working on, and it's almost in order of ease of implementation. Watch this space. I thought it was just good to tack on the end of one of these product demonstrations to sort of talk about what we're working on next. And it's an exciting area and really is getting us very motivated about this space of smart buildings because there's all these new opportunities available to us that we've never seen in the history of our company. So it's an exciting time to work in this space.
Thanks, John. Some great information. I know we've had a lot of internal discussions around AI, and it's certainly a very fast moving sector at the moment. There's a lot of talk about it. And as you rightfully touched on, it's part of the process has been finding or identifying how those AI services best fit our platform. And I think that we've made some really good progress in that space. We've started to lay some of the framework for that to actually function within the PlaceOS platform, to enable us to build from that. And we're actually fortunate to have some of our back end developers very acutely aware and have some very good in-depth knowledge of AI and its workings and things like that. So really excited to start bringing those features through and seeing how that all weighs up once it's actually in the platform, and with the ultimate goal of improving our user experience and being able to do things more efficiently within the platform, taking into account all of the integrations that we have within PlaceOS. So certainly something to keep watching, and we'll obviously keep everyone informed as we venture further down that path. But thanks very much for that insight, John. Very very interesting. And as I said with the product demos, if you do have more questions about PlaceOS and our future implementations of AI and services like that, please reach out. I know for a fact that John loves talking about AI, so I'm sure they'd be more than happy to have some more specific discussions around how that might look in PlaceOS and look in your environment as well. Looks like we've got our technology challenges resolved on the London side with Mario there, so we might jump back and give that one another crack. So I'll pass over to you, Mario.
So today I want to speak about occupancy-based energy automation, and this is the same concept as demand response control. So we're using data such as real-time location data, services data, to detect occupancy, real-time occupancy of the space, and drive to automation. So try to build some triggers on it to action some system modes such as HVAC, occupancy mode, on and off, and so on. What is occupancy-based energy automation? So traditionally, HVAC system and BMS systems are linear. So they use different parameters to automate processes and operations. But these parameters are sometimes very static, so they're not dynamic. We have, for instance, the occupancy mode, which is the main driver for HVAC system, is time schedules. So we have static time schedules such as the H1 will start at 7 a.m. and will stop at 6 p.m. So this is something that has been, for a while now, and is creating some problems in efficiency and optimization in operation hours. And this is because sometimes the spaces are not occupied, or they are meant to be occupied, but they are not really occupied by people. If the traditional approach is a linear approach, now we want to go to a circular approach, so a moral loop. So we have multi-parameter that are driving these operation systems. So the HVAC, we are adding different parameters such as class schedule, the real occupancy, the real-time occupancy, to understand if the HVAC system or other systems are meant to be on or off. For instance, if the class is scheduled and the real-time occupancy is showing that there are people in the space, then the HVAC system is meant to be on. But if we have the class scheduled for the room, but then no people are showing up for the class, then we want to save this energy that otherwise will be just consumed and wasted. So this is why we want to introduce this occupancy-based energy automation, because we want to input some data to output actionable insights. But how we want to do it? So we want to use the transactional and analytical data generated by the buildings and the portfolio, to then input some data into PlaceOS, gather this data, abstract the data, and then create some processes and create actionable data to then output back to feedback the systems. So in this case, we are, inputting the 4 main data generated by our portfolio, like BMS, lights, people, so real-time location data, blinds, access control, and so on. We are inputting all this data into PlaceOS and then generated triggers, automated triggers to turn things on and off accordingly. So a schematic example of this is an example of a class, so our smart campus, where we are using data generated by a scheduling system to trigger things on and off. So in this case, we generate different conditions based on the class scheduling. So if there is no class, then all the systems are off. But then when someone will generate an event, so we'll just write something in the scheduling system to plan a class, then PlaceOS will gather this information to generate insight. And insights and these actions and insights are, okay, if the class prep mode is on, which it can be 5 minutes before the class starts, then turn the VAV to occupied mode. Also, when the class starts mode is on, then we try to automate the processes such as turn the lights on, unlock the door, and then join the video call, or turn the AV on, and then also turning the blinds up. So in all these cases, there is no manual intervention because we are driving all these automations based on the data generated by the siloed systems. And then we also try to save energy, and this is the point of this automation. We want to enhance the user experience, but we want also to optimize and make the space more efficient. So once the class is finished, then we can build a precondition for this and turn everything off. You can see that in this case, energy is not consumed and is not wasted when it's not needed. So for a real example of a project that we've done in the past few months for a smart campus that we implemented, we noticed that in average classes are booked for a total of 7 hours per day, and HVAC runs for an average of 13 hours per day, which means almost double. So we have 6.1 hours longer of HVAC operations than the class scheduled. And this that we ran, which is still the class is ran for 7 hours, but with our automations, with precondition for bringing the space into temperature, into comfort zones, and so on. Then we have HVAC operation hours broke down to 10 hours, which is an over operations percentage of 152%, which is 3 hours more, which compared to the previous example when no automations from PlaceOS were built, we have 23% more efficient operation schedules for the HVAC system. So a real example, as I was describing for the benefits, is a project that we've done for a smart campus that we implemented recently. So we built the integrations for different systems, and we have PlaceOS that is gathering all this data coming from the real-time location data, IoT sensors, the scheduling system, the AV control, the lighting control, and so on. And we're trying to gather all this information to trigger different actions, and I showcased earlier in this presentation. And so in this case, I can show also how it looks on our platform, on our back office interface. So in this case, we are listing all the triggers that we built. So based on conditions, so comparison conditions based on data coming from the lights on, or the lights from the AV, from the blinds, and so on, we build some conditions to then call actions such as turn the lights off or turn the lights on, and set a scene, or we're trying to build all these automations based on conditions, and these conditions are based on data and based on the system mode, so the system status. So yeah, This is the real example of how we use automation, how we use data for creating actionable insights and actionable triggers.
Thanks, Mario. And that's probably a really good insight into the flip side of PlaceOS. Obviously a lot of our users are familiar with the room booking workflows and desk booking and things like that. But that's a really good insight into what that information looks like coming out the other side of the platform, which is really valuable insight into organizations. And absolutely, I think we've got a comment opportunity to monitor occupancy, heating, cooling, loads, and overall energy consumption for feedback into AI enhanced. So you're already seeing what we're putting down in that regard. That's definitely the direction that we're heading with some of those features, and being able to ingest that into various different modeling and provide workplace insight as well. Mario's got a lot of experience in that area and provided some really good insight, as you saw in the presentation, but also behind the scenes into how we shape up that that analytics side and what that information means both to us as a platform vendor and also to the end users as well. So I think that that pretty much brings us to the end of our session for this evening, or for this morning today. Like to thank John and Mario for joining us on this live product update with some really good detailed information around AI and the analytic capabilities of PlaceOS. As I said, if you've got any questions about the room booking approval workflow that we demoed tonight, or any of the content that was in John or Mario's presentation, please feel free to reach out to us either via your account rep or via our website, or any other communications channels, LinkedIn or whatever it might be. We'd be more than happy to have some further sessions and discuss some more of that stuff in detail. Also, as I mentioned, if you do have some product ideas or something that you'd like to see brought into PlaceOS, please feel free to send that through to us. That can go into our service desk support at place.technology, and we can collect that up and put that into the roadmap. If you're interested to see other things that are on the roadmap, we can certainly facilitate that for you as well. Otherwise, we'll be back probably in about a month's time, and we'll have a look at some of the new features at that point in time that are coming into PlaceOS. Obviously, looking after the product team, I know that there's some exciting stuff that's in the pipelines that's coming up. So we'll look forward to sharing that with you in the near future. Otherwise, reach out if you've got any other questions. And many thanks for joining us on this live product update. Thank you.